Oh, I'm going to do it next year. Yeah, I'll get around to it next time. I'm just too tired from work. Level up. This is the place to get motivated, inspired, focused, and learn some new game.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Work It Like a Job. My name is Michael Dean, and welcome. We are back with another episode, and we've got a great one lined up for you today. We are joined by none other than Scottie Baldwin. Sir, Scottie, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Man, thank you for coming. Now, for some of those who follow my other podcasts, specifically the Prince podcast, you remember Scottie from the Prince podcast, and that was a classic one. I still get people emailing or messaging me like, what was Scottie talking about with Prince at the end? And I'm like, man, well, maybe one day he'll get into that. But so definitely a lot of the listeners know who you are, and you have a huge following as it is. And so I'm blessed and appreciative of you for spending some time with me today, Scottie.
I appreciate you. And that people come up to me at shows and they'll say, especially Revolution shows, and they'll say, hey, that podcast was great. They always single that podcast out as being one that was informative and yet and pleasant to listen to as well. Well,
man, that's it was a pleasure of mine. And let me say too, and specifically for this podcast, I look at Scottie, and I'm also going to shout Dave Hampton out as well. I always look at these two guys as really sort of opening a lot of doors for me, whether they know it or not. I think they do know, as we had a conversation. But I'm very appreciative of you guys sort of trusting me and just speaking with me and sharing, because it really opened a lot of opportunities for me, and so I'm always appreciative of that.
Well, and we appreciate you, and because there's been a transformation in the last 3 years since Prince left us. That things go in waves, and now people are over that grieving stage, I think, and they're to a celebration stage, and they're into new music, and they're into discovering the excellence of Prince and what he brought to a lot of people. And so there's a natural, a bigger transformation happening underneath everything, or it's just so much so that we don't really detect it. And I think we're in that excellence phase. We're really discovering how excellent he was.
Yeah, and that sort of leads us into some of the conversation I want to have today with you, is to speak of that level of excellence, or the spirit of excellence, because, looking at your career so far and all of the great people that you have worked with, I feel like it really sort of starts with, being around Prince and working with him for many years. And I can imagine a lot of other artists look at Prince as the high watermark in the field, right?
Yes, and the way I can get that across to people is, as I always say, that Prince would have been on the favorite artist list of artists themselves. That's always a good thing when you can have high level artists say, "Well, I'm a fan of this person," and but it's not just that; it's that the diversity of the artists who considered Prince their favorite artist. Because you would have had, I haven't heard, but if you ask somebody like the composer John Williams, who does all the movie music for Spielberg,
I love John Williams.
I bet Prince would probably be on his top 10. And then you ask somebody in the classical music field, and you ask somebody in the punk, and you ask people in heavy rock, and you ask people in funk, of course, and Prince showed up on their list of favorites. And so I think that speaks a lot about, not only about Prince, but about his universal appeal to people, but how good he was at what he did for that many different types of people.
And it also speaks to, so you can have all of that too, but at the end of the day, Scottie, you have to deliver, right? Like you
Yes.
have to sort of meet that and beat that. And that speaks a lot that you do that. So yeah, that may open the door for you to get in there, but obviously the work itself has to be there. And I wanted to ask you this. I don't know if we ever mentioned this before. Was there ever a level of like, was there a pressure, I should say, like, okay, yeah, you did some Prince things, and now, here's another artist. I'm going to just throw out a name. I don't know where it will fall in the timeline, but say like a Madonna or something like that. Like, is there a pressure like, man, are they expecting me to just be this whole thing? Do you ever get pressured, or do you ever feel nervous going to some of these jobs?
I believe that the pressure usually it mounts in the beginning because I don't have any experience with a certain artist. Say Madonna, I didn't have any experience with her when I went to meet her and work with her. But it's usually loaded up on the front end, and the pressure is something I'd put on myself, because I found that at the end of the day, most artists with whom I've worked anyway, they're expecting less than I can deliver, right? So it's a classic case of sort of needless worry that it's going to be harder than it really is, and the reason for that is that Prince expected a lot of people around him, and he put you through these tests. I don't think they were conscious. I don't think he was saying, well, I'm going to test this person, I'm going to test them this way. It just sort of, he just moved at a fast pace, and you had to keep up, and you had to remain excellent. And when you didn't do that, you sort of made the decision easy for him to just move on. And somebody like Madonna, she didn't, at least what I was asked to do for her in 2003 I didn't have to be as excellent as I was, and just came off being for a long time with Prince. So they're usually asked less than what is not only required, but it's less is asked from what is necessary. It's just not, a lot of it isn't necessary because they don't have that high level of attention to detail that Prince had.
Wow. Okay. Was there another artist? Oh, and again, let me be clear. You don't have to name certain people. I can understand that how things would work. So I don't want to compare people, and I know how that can be when you work with certain artists and stuff. But was there another artist that was, if I could say, just as demanding as a Prince was?
And I don't mind naming names, because I would never do anything in a derogatory way anyway, because I believe in sort of the celebrating of excellence, and that's sort of what this episode is about. And so everyone has their bailiwick, their area of expertise or specialty, as it were, and so different artists ask for different things. Lady Gaga certainly was coming up on her. She was just learning how to be excellent at that time. She had it in her, but she didn't have the sustained excellence for that amount of time in 2009 and 10 when I was with her. So she demanded a lot of focus. That was all about focus for me. Because it was such a heavy schedule, and she was such a hard worker that I had to have constant focus. Easily as difficult as it was with Prince, because we would get breaks. When we were working, it was full on, and when we weren't, it was full off. Okay. Right, because he needed his time. Lady Gaga always seemed to be working. She was always in a state of working or waiting to work again. So that was a really intense year. So that was the challenge with her, was focus. I had to remain focused at all times. We had crazy schedule, really late and really early, and TV shows, and then we go right into an arena show. And there was that was demanding in its own way. So every artist has a different demand, and it's just meeting that demand and actually checking that artist to see if they're going to make people culpable for that kind of excellence.
Are a lot of these artists as hands-on? Like, how hands-on are a lot of these artists with you guys? You know, with you specifically, and some of the other tech people. I mean, are they just more focused on, I guess, the performance part, and they rely on you to make sure the sound is right, or are they really like listening? And like, no, I mean, you can hear Prince do it from stage at times. Yes. But I'm just curious if other artists, do they normally do that type of thing?
Well, again, they're all different, but so it depends on each artist and how much they did themselves. The artist with whom I'm working now, Wang Li-hom, he writes everything, records everything, produces it all, mixes it himself, wow. Directs his own music videos, and so he knows exactly what he wants at all times. It's never this nebulous sort of unspoken thing like, well, we're not sure what he wants. He knows what he wants, and you're there to help him get it. Other people have different people in those roles to define that. So either there'll be a show director that says, hey, we need help getting from this song to that song. Is there anything you can do in lights, or is there anything you can do in sound or playback or something that'll get us to that next thing? Or we need more time for a wardrobe change, so we need to fill some time. Does anybody have any ideas? Or maybe it's the producer of the record is coming in during rehearsals, and then I'll work with them. So it's different with every artist. But yeah, they all have something at which they shine. It's just that certain artists, a few in my career, high-level ones, they seem to have shine in more areas and a little bit brighter. You know, I think that's why they've made themselves into what they are.
Okay, now, and I don't want to mispronounce the gentleman's name because I will do that. Tell me the name of the guy you're working with now.
His name in America, we call him Leehom Wang, Leehomwang. In China, they turn the surname around, so I would be Baldwin Scottie, and so he's known professionally as Wang Leehom. And he is, yeah. And if people haven't heard of him, and not a lot of people in America in this market have heard of him, but he's an American guy, grew up in, I believe, Rochester, New York, made his way over to Taiwan, and he's an American citizen, and he's really huge in China. He's the biggest pop star in China for sure, if not all of Asia. And so he contacted me, and he knew the level to which I was used to working, and he has that level. And you know how you were talking about earlier that excellence seeks excellence. You run out of people to go to, or actually it makes it easier because then there are just fewer from whom to choose. And so he sought me out, and I'm working with him now, and it's a blast. It's a lot of flying. I fly back and forth to China every week once we get started. So I commute to China weekly for shows, and it's great to work on a level with all Berkeley grad musicians. All of his musicians are either doctorate or graduates of Berkeley or a music school like that. So I had to brush up. I had to get excellent at different things at which I hadn't been used to working, like Italian musical terms. And these guys speak on a different level. It's a different level of musicianship, right? So, and Leehom is very he's excellent, and he's excellent at different. I don't want to say. I think it's unfair to say anyone reminds me of anyone else, but his excellence at different instruments reminds me of Prince. And as I said, Prince. I might have said that on your podcast before. Prince was smart. He didn't do things at which he wasn't good. Like I think I may have said he never picked up a trumpet. It's probably because he couldn't play a trumpet. But Leehom has mastered violin and piano and guitar and vocal performance. So he's and he dances really well. So it's a testament to the width and depth of and breadth of his study.
See, I find it amazing because I had never heard of him before until you had mentioned I've talked to you before and you mentioned about him, and it reminds me of like this is such a huge world. Like there are superstar cats out here that we just may not have heard of here in America. But that doesn't mean like the next guy or there isn't somebody else that is on those levels of greatness that are not out there. And I just find it fascinating. And the fact that you're working with them, like it's like, wow, it's just, people will find what they need to. Go ahead. We pass them every day. Physically, we drive past them or we walk past them every day, and people are excellent at things that we don't know just because it's in the in the world of music. Right. It doesn't mean we're not passing people on the street every day who are excellent at what they do. It's and a lot of times people get in trouble because they get so good at something, they work themselves. I don't like the term, but people say they're overqualified for something. And I had an artist who told me a few years ago. She told me, "Well, we know you're overqualified to work here and work with us." And I corrected her right away, and I said, "No, I'm not overqualified. I just bring a lot to the table. I can do anything you want. What would you like me to do?" Because that's stating that we don't have enough to pay you. That's what that means. You're overqualified means we don't have enough to pay you what you deserve. But that goes to the agreement. If you agree to work for something, you have to. And Dave Hampton can speak on this. He's the expert at all this. Is that you're worth what you accept, and so once you make a deal, you still give all the excellence. I've never worked less hard for anyone because I was making less or more, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You always bring what you do, and you just bring a wider toolkit, a bigger toolkit with more experience, and you've seen every situation over and over again. So a lot of the people on my resume, I didn't have to reach as far in the toolkit, but I just had to reappropriate my own challenges. I like that you said that. You basically said, I still gave 200%, even though I was getting paid 100%. Like I still was doing what I do, whether or not what I negotiated for. It stands out to me because it makes me think of sometimes when we, have our jobs, and there'll be times where there's some employees at a job that just they're known for going hard. They work hard. They'll exceed what their job is to be, right? You're just supposed to be this position, but sometimes you do this position and you kind of will dabble into that. You bring these other skills to the table, regardless of necessarily that's what they're paying you for. I'm going into that because I kind of wanted to speak about work ethic as well. And I wanted to frame it in the terms of two different things. One, both of us are fathers, have families. I am not struggling, but I am dealing with trying to instill the importance of work ethic to my son. He's 11 years old. Mm. And so I'm curious, you would have what I would like to see as a non-traditional job, right?
Yes.
You're not going to a 9 to 5 down the street or in the next town. You are traveling across the world and doing different things. And I'm sure your off times are different. What could you, or what do you hope to, I don't know, how would I say this? What kind of work ethic are you showing, your kids? I don't know. I can't remember if you have a son or a daughter or both.
I have two daughters.
Two daughters. What are they sort of seeing from their dad in terms of his work? Do they understand what you do?
They do. Okay. They do. And I try and involve my wife, Christina, and my daughters. I try and bring them out to see what I do and let them. I think it's about communication. It's just about letting them know that this is non-traditional. But, the non-traditional is turning traditional now. Mm-hmm. People work out of their houses and out of their homes. And people will. There's all sorts of. It takes all types to make a world, and it takes all types of ways to make that world work. So nothing is just a 40-hour show up and punch the clock kind of thing anymore. It's very different. The workforce is changing. It's changing over time, and so we need to. It all depends on approach. I always try and instill, because I'm gone a lot. I have to make the time that I'm home rational and reasonable and make it count. So my wife and I do a good job because she's in the arts as well. We sort of have to balance that out in how we trickle things down to them and try and have life lessons in the fact that not everyone travels as much as we do. Or as a family, we're able to travel because I can cash in miles to go do things. And so we can travel the world as a family. And that's something that's a privilege we have just because of the hard work and time in the air that I've been doing. Right. So okay. It's ethic it's an interesting thing though to me, because some people can relate, and I was trying to relate to everyone when I speak. So say there's someone listening to this who's a engineer, right? Mm-hmm. They press play because they know what I've done in my career, and so they want to take a listen. But they think that there's no relation there because there's nothing to relate, because they're at a house of worship, or they're working at a sound company, or they're just getting started, or maybe they mix at home and they want to mix live, right? Or maybe they're doing a theater mixing thing and they want to get better and tour. And it's how to relate to that person, how to have us relate. And I think in work ethic, it's just doing the best you can but there's a limit to that too, because you can't outwork. There's a principle. I don't know if it's in Taoism. That doesn't sound right. There's something that says never outshine the master, right?
Right.
That might sound familiar, but I'm not sure where it's
heard that.
And I found that experientially that if I work harder than an artist, or I bring things up to them that say, oh, this is cool, but you could do this and it would be better. You do that in front of people, or you put them on the spot by saying, you could do this better, and you're going to work yourself right. Your good work ethic is going to work you right out of a job in no time.
Right. There's I guess what it is there is a time and place for everything. I think if you try to do that and you're not conscious enough to understand sort of your place in the totem pole with other people around that person,
yes,
you're going to talk yourself out of it. But maybe there's when it's just you two and you know that person enough to, I can suggest this to him. He's not going to take it like I'm trying to dethrone this person or something. You know what I mean? But that's a learned sort of thing. It is. To know how to do that.
Yeah, I did that wrong with a Duran Duran. I at the end of a tour, I was asked exactly. I was really respected on that tour by the guys, and I got that position to mix them because of what I did, what I had done, and the fact that 3 of the 5 of those guys were really big Prince fans, and so we did a year tour, and then at the end they collectively asked for my assessment of the tour, and I did a really, I still have it somewhere on a Word doc or something from 2003, where I did an assessment of the tour, what needed to be improved, what could be better, and I was very candid about it, but I wasn't very tactful. I just didn't spell it out like I was sitting next to them. I spelled it out as if I were across from them, telling them, and so I did that wrong. That was everything in there was really valid, and I heard from several of those guys since then, and they said, "Hey, thanks for that. That really helped us." But it wasn't. I didn't do it appropriately. I didn't instill that sort of. I didn't instantiate that in the right way. It wasn't like, for instance, this and this and this. I didn't do it the right way. Since then, I've learned to work with artists and sort of. Who really was great at it was Maxwell. He was. I'm sure that he's still as good at it today. He's supportive. Maxwell was a supportive artist who. Took the people around him and wanted them to be better, and it made the whole thing better. It was great. He was always. I still always did suggestions in private. He would come into my office on breaks, on my little mix office in the corner at Center Staging in L.A. and he say, "So what do you hear?" And I said, "Well, I hear this, and what if you did this, and this is in the same key." And I got to play that role and not step on anyone. And then he would make suggestions when they came back. And then they would be his ideas, which I didn't mind. That's the old good idea, glad I thought of it theory, right?
Right.
You tell someone something, they say, "That good idea, glad I thought of it." But it worked, and it worked well with the musical director and the band, and that's the two artists. I met Dave Hampton on that tour. So when like minds find each other, and it's just a matter of putting that energy into each other and not having anything supersede each other, and not do it for the reason of ego. It's always to make the quality better.
Yes, and it made me think of Maxwell. I remember seeing an interview from him. This might have been a few years ago, but he was telling a story that he was so like taken aback because I think it was Prince and maybe Harry Belafonte or something, and they were like sort of expressing to him like how much they appreciated his art and they wanted him to keep going, like. And he was just like, wow, like I never really thought that these guys that are so like, I look up to them and they were like paying attention and wanting me to continue on with the art. And that always struck me when I heard him say that.
Well, the best compliment, I told Maxwell, the best compliment you could expect from Prince was when after there was an award show that Maxwell performed at the award show and Prince was in the front row, and Prince caught me at the soundboard. I was with Maxwell at the time. Prince caught me at the soundboard and he said, "Watching your boy," meaning Maxwell, "watching your boy is like watching home movies," which is that's a huge compliment.
Right. Wow. He
was basically saying, here he is in his infancy of his career with the same kind of blown out afro that Prince had when he was a kid, right? Mm-hmm. So and that's a truly a Prince type quote, "Watching your boy is like watching home movies." That's a great compliment. Because he was reminded of himself and how hard he worked. Maxwell was a hard worker too, though. He was somebody who came prepared, ready to act, and ready to get things done.
Yes. Just looking over, we'll jump around just a little bit. I'm only asking you this question. One, I'm just in a spirit of fun, but it's not necessarily a fun sort of reason why he's in the news right now. But I'm just curious. You worked with R. Kelly. I mean, you can't escape the fact that everyone's talking about that. What was your recollections of being on that tour? I think it was 2001.
It is. The first thing that I remember about working with Rob on that tour is that the 9/11 attack happened as we were on that tour. So that's something I always jump back to that because everyone remembers where they were when the planes hit. And I was in, I believe we were in Belgium or somewhere. We had just flown over and were setting up for the first rehearsal of that tour. And we got the news and we put the because to us it was 3 or 4 in the afternoon. It was 6 or 7 hours later, 5, 6, 7 hours later. So we put it up on the big screen and saw the second plane hit. So I always think of Rob and flying scares him. And so he was, I think, at the time already on the Queen Elizabeth QE2 or whatever. He was already on his way over on the boat to start the tour. And so I sort of I recollect that as being a part of that sort of era with Rob. And, you know, I don't know whether I'm happy about this. I think I'm indifferent, but I had almost less communication with any artist with Rob as with any artist. I didn't have to interface with him much. He didn't show up for rehearsals. He didn't show up for sound check ever. I never did a sound check where he was there. He would show up usually a little late, or a lot late, but he would show up and just take the mic from the stage manager and walk on stage and do the show, and then he'd be gone. So I didn't really have to interface much with Rob, but he. So I guess, you know, he's got his own fish to fry now, but but I believe all that stuff sort of happened on the tour that I was on, and so that's not a comfortable thing. And I don't know. As far as excellence, I didn't feel a ton of excellence from him on that tour. Doesn't mean he's not a hard worker and not good at his art, but there's been a divide in his personal life, and he's and not able to really separate those. You know, somebody smarter than me once told me that it's called the music business. It's two words. They're equally as important, but either you're engaged in one or the other, and that's it. So either you're engaged in the music or you're engaged in the business end, but nothing else. And I've sort of tried to live by that and just keep things one or the other, and that's all. And clearly Rob didn't do that, so he's paying for that now.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a touchy subject. The only thing I do know for certain about R. Kelly, and this is purely just as someone who has bought some of his music over the years, I can't deny he does not. He can write he knows how to write a hit song, or so all that other stuff is, it is what it is. But I just wanted to ask that. Rob and I put R. Kelly and Kanye in the same sort of not for their personal lives, but as artists, I put them in the same group, because everyone says what a genius Kanye West is. When I listen to his stuff, I don't really hear it. Now, that's just because I just don't get him the same way I didn't get Bowie. Like I've listened to a lot of David Bowie stuff. My cousin is a huge fan of Bowie. We've talked about Bowie and the influence Bowie had, but it just never clicked with me. So as much as I respect Kanye West and what he's done, I don't have, as an artist with me, it didn't click. Same as with Bowie and Rob, kind of the same thing. I mixed him, and I liked his good songs, and I know what a hard worker he is, and I know he's super musical, even though he's not a learned person. I can't speak on Kanye. I've never worked with him, but I put it in the same thing where I don't get it, but everyone else says they're geniuses, so I sort of leave it at that. So I've had many arguments with people over this because I will say, to me, Kanye West is a genius in what he does. I don't say that I think, to me, and I've done hip hop production, rap production, many years, and understand what that is. And I just think anyone who can make that type of music and do it at a level that he's doing, that's a genius. Now, I'm not saying he's John Williams, we mentioned earlier, or Prince or that, but for what he does and in that particular genre, I can't deny he has written and done dope work.
And maybe I haven't, and maybe I haven't listened enough, and that certainly could be the case as well, and I haven't discovered him. But not everyone resonates with everyone. Yeah,
that's very true. I mean, I'll say this, and I've said this before. The Beatles. I have the utmost respect for the Beatles, and I understand what they mean to the culture and to the world, blah blah blah. But I just personally never grew up listening to them, so I don't have the songs don't necessarily mean what they mean to everybody else. Only because I just, people were down this path. We was on this other path, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't say that. To me, I would give up that they're geniuses. I understand. I've read enough, heard enough. I do know some of the bigger songs, but they don't mean that way to me, only because I just grew up on other things. But I can see why they are special. You know what I mean? I understand why they are. Go ahead.
It blew my mind when somebody told me that the Beatles, the released Beatles catalog is less than 10 hours. That blew my mind, because can you imagine saying that same thing about Prince?
Right.
I mean, not even close. I mean, less than 10 hours. Now, that doesn't mean Paul McCartney and Wings, and that doesn't mean George Harrison solo stuff or Ringo Starr. It doesn't mean separately Lennon stuff, but it means together as the Beatles, it was less than 10 hours, which is crazy. You can do that in an afternoon. You can take in the whole thing in one afternoon. And but it doesn't surprise me if your chips were meant to pass in the night and not meet. I understand that we don't all gravitate towards, and it depends on where we are in our life and how we ingest an artist. Clearly, Prince fans take Prince very personally, and they have their own journey and where they are right now, 3 years after the fact.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all about the impact of things. Like, it may not have it may be the 10 hours or whatever, but I mean, that impact may hit you more than that, or, what I mean? So it all depends. Yes. But yeah, I mean, we all sort of judge our levels of greatness or genius by the rules we sort of set. Going back to the non-traditional job situation, I was just curious. Yeah. Let the dogs out.
We'll have to start that over. Come here. I'll let you start that over.
Yep. So going back to the non-traditional job question, I'm curious, like, because I mean, you have a family. Is there ever sort of the pressure of, you're gone too much? I want to break from the kid. I mean, it's things that we have to deal with as fathers and having families, whether we're mother or fathers. How do you guys sort of juggle, raising the family and you guys are sometimes separate?
Well, because Christina and I both come from either touring or performing background, and we're both self-employed. Oh. We have a great benefit. It's not that one of us has a traditional job and the other doesn't. So we understand I think it's all about communication with each other and then with our children, and letting them know what we do and that it's important what we do when we bring, it's important to bring art into people's lives, whether it's from a technical support perspective as I do, or Christina as a performer and director and theater and opera singer. So it's important to bring that to people's lives, because we have a lot, especially nowadays, we have a lot to escape. There's a lot of we put ourselves, art is sort of a recession-proof medium, because we all need artists. And I mean, can you imagine the world without art? It's really difficult to do. And so art is the relief. And I always said that Gaga is part greatness and part timing. Lady Gaga came along right after the crash of 2008, and she came along to say, just dance, gonna be okay. A lot of things she was saying in her music were what people needed to hear. So timing is everything, right? And so we just try and let our girls know that it's all about communication. We just communicate with them, and they're both, as you can imagine, we have a very artistic and creative household, and they're singing all the time and performing. And so it's easy for them to understand why I'm gone and why Christina's gone when she has to do stuff out of town. And we just keep things open and communicate. That's the only way to do it. I think we all instinctively know that it's about communication, but it's harder to do. It's easy to say and harder to do, but we seem to what we have, it works because we've had it work for almost a dozen years now. And so it's all about communicating the reason that we're gone and making the time that we're home valuable.
Okay. Now, how long have you guys been married?
Coming up on 11 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
So thank you. And it's very, people think that maybe, being gone is good. You can get away and you can do your own thing. But to me, I'm when I'm gone, I'm always somewhere where I'd rather be somewhere else. I'd always rather be home. Not everyone can say that. And I think I'm blessed to be able to say that, because I always kind of want to be at home and want to be with my family. But and not everyone feels that way. And it does. There is time when I'm gone, that there's way more pressure on my wife to make the family work as a solo parent. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing, because a lot of some people only have one parent. So how are you supposed to be in a creative venture in your life and try and be in a creative medium and you're a single parent? Right. So there's that too. There are roadblocks. Everyone has their situation, and some are harder to get around. And it's a delicate balance. It's really, there's no one prescriptive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's nothing prescriptive that works for everyone. Everything has to be an individual basis, and we all have to find out how we can best navigate those waters.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's always tough. And that's kind of what I'm, sort of getting at, is like, you have a very unique, life situation, which may be different from a lot of people, but I think there's always little things that you can kind of hear, but I think that are universal things. And I think that communication, as you spoke of, would probably work across the board, no matter what your situation may be.
Now look at somebody like Prince, because Prince didn't have children, and any woman in Prince's life, a wife or a relationship, was probably secondary to his love of music, right? So he had what I would say is a very unique situation where he was always engaged in music and the love of his life, probably, I'm guessing. So being a partner to Prince, I don't think would have been very easy. It wouldn't have been. I mean, I've never had a discussion with Manuela or Maite about that, and never will, I'm sure. But how to balance that with someone who's such a creative force and known worldwide as such, how do you get that time out of them? That's something that, because he had no competition. He could always do what he wanted when he wanted, from when he was maybe 18 or 19 years old.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, so to talk about balance, I mean, I'm careful I ask this, but I would imagine he could have maybe used a little more balance.
100%
in his life there. Obviously the music is so important, and I get that, but again, there are other relationships or other things as people that we have to sort of have in our lives as well to equal things out sometimes.
It's not that that would have brought balance. That's just my opinion, by the way. But it's not just that would have brought balance to his life. It would have also provided him with two things. Number one, a relationship, the beauty of a relationship, a long-term relationship or a marriage or something that ended up working for a long period of time, the benefit of that, and family. But also it would have been good because it would have provided what he needed as an artist to write.
Yes.
Artists run out of things to write about. When they start to write about their car, you have to look out, because there's something. I'm not saying that everything has to be about your personal experience, and certainly people can conjure up fictional elements of things that really speak to people as truths in their life, right? Songs aren't true typically, but they are truths in people's lives. You can hear a good song and it can move you, but you're living someone else's fiction or a truth. There's been a lot of focus recently on Freddie Mercury and Queen, right, and Bohemian Rhapsody, and there's a guy who wrote about his life. It's in almost every song when you listen to the songs that Mercury wrote, and those songs have become truths in all of our lives as fans of that. And so family and balance, I guess is the word, balance creates art as well. And it creates this pocket of art. And I always wished for Prince that he would have let other people produce them, or that he would have brought more artists in to record at Paisley Park with him, or that he would have just said, come on up and record a record here for nothing. I'll just give you whatever you want. Have Adele come and record a record, or have Alicia Keys come and record for nothing, and bring in these sort of, in Europe, they used to do these salons where you'd have painters and writers and authors and poets and musicians, and they all used to get together and drink and talk about art, and they used to have this cross-pollination of all these sort of arts that would come together. And I always wish in the world that we had a little more of that now. And I certainly think that it would have been interesting, at the very least, to see Prince pollinate his hang on.
No, you're good.
It's I think it would have been interesting if Prince would have been able to pollinate his experiences with other people. That would have been interesting to see what that would have been like.
Well, do you think that he was kind of doing that? I mean, because he had a lot of younger musicians around him, toward the later part. Not necessarily, they may not have been known, artists, but I don't know if he was more so mentoring them, I guess maybe you would say.
Well, this falls upon now on, I want to be clear that this is my opinion, right. And it's not word, but my opinion is that he always ran the relationships, both personally and professionally, that he had, right? He was the shot caller. Right. Okay, if you find out he was friends with Van Jones, you'd go, yeah, well, who was the person that dictated that relationship? Oh, okay, he's friends with a certain another musician or something. He was always the one that was looked at as the person that spoke about things, and the other person reacted to them, and that was very typical, right? That's just the truth. I try and speak the truth, and whatever it might hurt, that he was the shot caller in every relationship that he had with everyone, and that was good for him. It was. And people felt alive, and to be in his presence and to breathe the air he was breathing, they felt alive, more alive. And as I said before, most people define their interaction with Prince as the greatest thing that they had done in their life. Most people will say that. Mm-hmm. I was Prince's whatever, or I did this with Prince. And I'm not singling Prince out. There are a lot of artists in different creative endeavors that people will hang everything in their life on the fact that they worked with that person. And I think we have to be careful of that. I once had for inspiration, I guess, I once brought a bust of Beethoven into rehearsal. We had a long rehearsal stretch at Paisley Park. And I brought a bust of Beethoven and had it sitting next to my soundboard. Some people put pictures of their wife and kids or their husband and their children, in their work area. You do that in a cubicle. Yeah. And I had a bust of, I was single at the time. I brought a little bust of Beethoven. It was tiny, but it provided me with inspiration. I was listening to a lot of Beethoven piano and violin sonatas back then. And Prince walked up and tilted it back toward himself and turned and said, "What false idol are we worshiping today?" And it's funny because I think that day he had a big photo shoot in the soundstage, where he was posing and looking off to the side and doing all that. So it was sort of funny how reciprocally he was saying something. He could have been saying it to himself. We all have inspiration. We all work with inspiration in our life, and that inspiration helps us get to excellence. Right? That's what provides the fuel for excellence. Mm-hmm. And not everything we do is excellent, but you can try. It's noble to try and be excellent. And so it's sort of, we just have to look for, again, balance. I love that word. It's probably my favorite word, just balance. Just keep it balanced.
That sounded like Prince doing the old do as I say, not as I do. Yeah, the old black father.
Yes.
So, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I had a chance to actually I've seen you with them twice. The Revolution. I know you working with. Are you still doing shows with them when they're out?
I am everything I can. With Wang Lihom, we have a fairly aggressive schedule in the summer, and but I do everything I can with the Revolution. That's a real labor of love for me, and I care about those five very much, and what they have done and what they're continuing to provide people. And I know it comes from their heart. Everything comes from deep within them and the love that they had and still have for Prince. So there's just a feeling that you get when you're at a Revolution show that I think for Prince fans is just it's really ineffable. It's difficult to put into words. It's people are still affected very heavily, and everyone involved in that project still gets emotional about it, because it's just, the music is just that strong, and they come from that era. The songs they do are just that impactful. It's all killer, no filler on that set list. There's nothing. It's trying to get the show down to 2 hours. It could be a 3.5 hour show with them, So that I do everything I can with them, and they start up again here pretty soon. So they're all getting excited. Everybody's excited about that.
And they're I don't know if you're going to that, but I know they're going to be playing at the celebration thing this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be there this year. I'll be in China at the time, but I know it's always healing, and now I think it's more celebratory. The first one, I'm sure, was a sense of healing, and this will be way more celebratory. I think I look forward to that. I think Prince fans are going to have a lot of fun at that. Yeah.
To me, the thing with the Revolution, I always it's big. I think for a Prince fan, when I saw him the first time they came to Seattle, it was just like, it was one, I couldn't believe it. It's just like, man, I've wanted to see these guys forever. And then you actually hear the show, feel it. And it was just like, it was beyond, like, I was like, God, this is so good. And then the second time I saw him was a different sort of experience. Excuse me, actually getting to sort of speak to them and hang out for a little bit. They have a very interesting thing where I think for a Prince fan, seeing Purple Rain and that concert and just all those albums and what it means to us, it's almost as, and I think I've said this many times and I've said this to them, but it's like they're like essentially like superheroes to us. And so when you actually see them, it's just like, I know they're just like the most humblest of people. I know this now, but I couldn't help but not be a little like, ooh, that's windy there. That's,
that's right. You do feel that, that sense of greatness in them. Yeah. Right. You just kind of feel it. It's a real feeling. And I forget when it was. It was we got when Bobby and Matt. When Bobby called me and we got started, I had a meeting with Bobby and Matt. We hit the ground running and making the show, crafting the show to sound really authentic and make sure everybody was comfortable with how the sound was going to be, just from a conceptualized standpoint. Was this song going to be faster? Was it going to be slower? Was it going to be more aggressive? Was it going to be just like the record and things? We hit the ground running so hard with that. It wasn't until a couple of weeks in where I walked into a room and those five were sitting down in a room, and I walked in and I sort of had a little moment, where I went, oh, and it brought me right back to December 23rd of 1984. Yep. St. Paul Civic Center, I believe it was. Yeah. And it was incidentally, I told that story about Bobby. I finally told Bobby, I said, hey, you threw a drumstick. I reached out for it and it hit me right in the forehead. I didn't even get the drumstick.
Hilarious.
At that show. No, I didn't. I said, yeah, you did, man. I got hit in the forehead with the drumstick. So someday I might just throw a drumstick at him. Payback. Just, but yeah, you get the feeling that you get that sense of greatness in them, and certain artists do that. They still will leave an imprint of that largesse. You feel that when you're around them because they're voluminous in their in what they have to offer, and it's really that band could do anything. All anybody has to do is watch. Oh, what is that 85 concert from out east?
Syracuse, yeah.
Syracuse, yeah. You show any kid that. You show John Williams that. Somebody corner John Williams at his next session when he's recording an orchestra and say, John, we're going to take a 2.5 hour break and watch this concert. He won't leave the room. You're arrested. You're just arrested. You're locked in and watching this, and you can't believe you're watching that high level of art.
It's so funny you keep mentioning John Williams. That was the very first album I ever got. Was Star Wars: A New Hope, the soundtrack.
Same with me.
That's crazy.
Final, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That was the very first record. I think maybe I may have had because my parents may have had a Jackson's album, old sort of thing. But the one I first actually got was.
What was your first CD? Do you remember your first CD?
Oh, my first CD. Wow. I was late to CDs. I was a cassette guy forever, so I can't really remember. It may have been. It was either a Prince album, or it could have been some random rap thing that I do not remember at the time.
Mine was the soundtrack to Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
Who does the music for that?
Who did that? Jerry
Goldstein or
it might have been Jerry Goldsmith. Yeah,
Goldsmith.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But it sounds like a Jerry Goldsmith. I don't want to give somebody credit where it was great though. I mean, I love a lot of. I've been into a phase where I've been listening to soundtracks. Like
I still do that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite right now is James Bond Moonraker.
Oh, that's a good. I'll have to go on that. Is that on a? That must be on a streaming service somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the streaming services. Yeah, but
and that has to do with who's James Bond again? That's who scored all.
Well, I have to look it up.
He did all the James Bond. I
gotta look it up.
Yeah, can you look that up? Because that he had a very interesting. His name's on his. I'll
get it here in a second. Yeah, that's just a tip of your tongue type of things.
Yeah. But anyway, he's a British composer, and I heard him. I remember turning on NPR once, and it was in the middle of an interview, and it sounded like this really pompous.
John Barry.
And it sounded like a really pompous British guy with a really heavy, thick accent, and he was laying it on thick, and he was saying, yes, of course, when I school these, and I thought, who is this guy? And then he started to talk about James Bond. I said, oh no, that's John Barry, isn't it? And he said the most interesting thing to me, that he said every James Bond theme is in a minor key.
Interesting.
And he said, because the character itself was so campy and so cartoonish that to do anything in a major key would have made it just double up on the campiness. So he said he always wrote that sort of diminished and minor keyed thing. And when you think about it, it worked. And I used to love when Prince would, during Kiss, I think on the Nude tour, Prince would play the James Bond theme on the guitar.
Oh, wow.
But during the middle of Kiss, I'm pretty sure it was Kiss. And so I'm sure that sense of that sense of minor key, how that sounds a little scary, and that tends to, those sort of layers sort of get to us.
Yeah, I actually have a huge love for earlier soundtrack albums. Like, I mean, obviously it comes from that John Williams, because I pretty much have all John Williams stuff. But I love those 70 ones. I started really getting into John Barry a few years ago because I just never really listened to it. But there are certain elements in some of the pieces that are like funky to me. And then there's like, I'm like, God, this stuff is really good. But I really appreciate, though, just the different feels that they give. And because I grew up on what some would call campy. I don't know. I guess they're just a part of me. I don't see them that way. Like, to me, I legitimately see Roger Moore as James Bond. I can see now with my older eyes that he was hamming it up, but back then I took it deadly serious.
Oh yeah. And it all has to do with the era, doesn't it? And you have to experience it in that era. One of my favorite composers, lesser known than John Williams and some of the biggies, Lalo Schifrin and things like that, is a guy named Jerry Fielding. And for jazz, for musicians to listen to Jerry Fielding, who did. As a matter of fact, for Lee Helm's band, I turned on, in the dressing room, I turned on Dirty Harry, the Dirty Harry soundtrack.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Clint Eastwood, it's got to go back to like 72, 73, 74, whenever Dirty Harry first came out. And you can turn on the Dirty Harry soundtrack, and it is amazing. It's serious, heavy jazz. And all the chase scenes were jazz and bongos and trumpet solos, and it's not done like that anymore. Everything is scored a different way. It's scored in one room. But these guys, they were putting, Clint Eastwood wanted jazz underneath his Dirty Harry, and those are they're really fun. It's fun to get in that sort of cycle, where you listen to funk heavily for a few months, or you'll get into Queen. I've been going through this Queen phase, so it's Queen every day, and we're singing Queen in the house, and my daughters know all the lyrics to all the Queen songs, and I like getting into those phases of soundtracks and listening to them.
Yeah,
really getting into it.
And going back to the Queen thing a little bit, and I know they have the Elton John one is coming next. I don't know if you've seen the trailers for that. I saw the trailer the other day. I was at the movies, and that music came on, and I was actually in a Dolby Digital theater. I don't know if you've experienced that yet, but they have like 50 speakers on the ceiling or something, so the whole room just. But that Elton John came on and said, and I mean, that
Yes.
whole room, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
I never heard it like this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to see that movie. Like, it just, I was like, God.
I have a prediction about that because I
Go ahead.
watched both trailers, and
It looks
when you
like
watch,
it's almost a surreal fantasy take on it, but go ahead.
yeah. If you watch the trailers one after the other, you watch Bohemian Rhapsody and then you watch the Elton John trailer. My prediction is that, and usually I don't like prognostication, but I predict that movie will fall flat in many ways. I think it won't be. Number one, the artist is still alive. Number two, so they can reflect on it and talk about it, and they can say, well, yes, they got this right and this wrong, and also that it's just hard to capture the life and be truthful of someone like they did for Bohemian Rhapsody. They of course they took liberties in certain timeline issues of timeline, and they did that for dramatic effect. But to be able to cast the right person in the right role and make the band look all the same and get everything so right, and Queen's music just lends itself toward the theatrical, right? Because it was part musical theater and part rock, part funk. You know, when you hear Another One Bites the Dust, I don't know of anyone that doesn't move to that. And so it will be hard, and which leads me into thinking that it will be extremely. I mean, it didn't work out too well. Didn't they do a James Brown? There was a movie about James
Brown. Yeah. Get on
a
up.
few years ago. Yeah, Get On Up. And I don't know how well that did, how well it was received, or how well it did. I don't think.
Did you see the movie?
I didn't see it.
I liked it when it came out. Admittingly that, like you're saying, it's hard to capture the essence of guys like that, and do it right. There's almost genie in a bottle. But I actually did feel at the time that I was like, you know what? They got James for what they could do. But I hear what you're saying. I kind of get where you're going with it.
Trying to replicate that, or just and trying to, and ultimately, I'm sure a Prince biopic, a Prince movie will be made. That will be first of all, the casting is going to be nearly impossible, right? It's going to be nearly impossible to cast because it will be looked at it'll be so scrutinized. It will be so difficult to land that role and get that look and that feel and that all the little minutia, all the looks that he had. He had a bunch of tells, and you have to get all those right. Then you have to capture the music right. Then you have to involve, in Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen was involved heavily. Brian May and Roger Taylor, anyway, were involved in every aspect of it. So to try and get all that right is next to impossible. And they did it with the Bohemian Rhapsody. And to do a Prince movie, that has got to be a long road to hoe. That's not going to be easy.
And with the Bohemian movie, that production riddled with issues, right? Like, they had to get rid of the director during the movie.
Yes.
I mean, so it's definitely not an easy thing. In terms of it being so I always think, like, when I saw the Queen movie, and I was blown away when I saw that, I was like, wow. And that made me start thinking, could they do, I want them to do a Prince movie that is just as great as this, if not greater. But yes, the challenge is, how are they going to do that? Like, it's almost one of these impossible guys.
It is
to capture. I would think, when I think, again, I thought that with James Brown, I was like, who's going to play James and it not come off as a spoof or making fun of it or something? Who could play Michael Jackson and it not come off as, off the mark, or it's just, it's comical.
It has to be an unknown. You have to get an unknown, because when you get a known performer, they're going to want to bring themselves somehow. They just always bring themselves to the role, and they bring their brand to the role, and you always see them as them doing someone else.
Yeah, well, see, that's a question, because I would bring up Ray, like Ray Charles, with
no, that's good. That's a good point.
Fox. But I don't know, is it because, at least for a lot of us, we were so removed from when Ray was in, we know who he was, but none of us we didn't know it like we sort of know a Prince or some of our later people. So I don't know if you have to wait a longer time. So like when they do hire somebody for Prince, it isn't so like just off the heels of like, we know exactly every little minutia about Prince and his look, that they could sort of bring in somebody else. And it's like, okay, there's been enough time now. I mean, just with Queen, I mean, to some degree, I knew what Queen was, obviously. I knew the music, but I was a little removed, so I don't know how his hardcore fan base took that movie, and if they felt like he got it right, to me it looked like they got it right. I mean, just looking at that Live Aid performance.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been 25 years or something since they were really in the throes of it. So, yeah, it'll be it. But it's hard not to imagine that at some time they won't be recreating the night of the piano.
Wow, yeah, that would be interesting.
So that'll be done at some point in the future by other people that maybe the artist that's going to play him isn't even born yet. That's kind of how that works.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. That's think about that. Speaking of that, obviously you recorded that concert, the original. Was that the 21st of January?
That was the 21st, January 21st.
Recorded those shows. Have you heard any, and I don't know how, again, you can say, I don't know but has there been any talk of late to try and get those to be released, or just even a conversation of the status of,
That I don't have any insight into that because I'm not in contact with the people that would do that, but they're the people that will ultimately bring all the recordings that people want to hear out to people are engaged in it quite a task. I mean, that's quite a lot to ask, to take an artist's entire career in a vault and have to digitize it, go through it, make choices, lay out a plan. That's just going to take time to do that. I'm sure they're working very diligently and thoughtfully on a timeline. I know people want to hear everything now. We live in an age of now. Everything's now. You can find out who did the soundtrack just by doing it while we're talking, so those things have to be unfolded the way you'd unfold something properly, and it has to come out. And I'm sure they've got a plan that has to do with a timeline and release things sort of in order. And first of all, you have to collect it all, which they've done, and you have to go through it, which they're doing, and then you have to release it as you want to, but it has to be done in a certain way that makes sense to the legacy and the estate.
What did you think of the, I believe it was called Piano on a Microphone, 1983?
You know what? I haven't heard it.
Oh, okay.
I haven't heard it. I'm sure it's on a streaming service, but I just haven't listened to it. I think it's great that they're getting out stuff that's so personal. He ended on he ended doing his career solo, which I think is really beautiful. The only thing I wish that could have happened, and maybe I'm wishing it for them, is I wish he would have done a show with the Revolution. I think that'd be fun to have seen that kind of show happen. But for his career to end on a solo note, I think is beautiful. It's very fitting because he came in as a solo performer doing it all himself, and then he ended doing it all. So we all have that arc, right? We all have an arc to our life, and his arc was meant to end then, and it was, and I'm just glad that he got to it. And so for them to release something that was essentially the same, from what I understand, it wasn't a live though. That was studio sessions, right?
Yeah, it was like him in his home studio, sort of rehearsing, actually, essentially.
So probably more informally and or working out ideas or something that there's nothing like that sort of intimate, especially with Prince, hearing the intimacy. We all like the big numbers, right? You love the confetti and the guitar solos and stuff, but he's a very personal artist. Just sort of put him in headphones and have him right inside you as you're playing him. There's nothing like that. So I'm sure I'll actually have to go listen to that today after we're done.
I mean, obviously to say it's worth a listen is an understatement, but I think it's actually it's a very interesting thing to listen to. Because you get to hear him sort of like thinking and coming up with things. And
I see.
I just love hearing just like the soulfulness of just kind of him just doing him. It's like, and then there's a lot of playfulness in it as well, which is really cool. Obviously, it's a very earlier Prince, but.
Yeah, but that I loved his I've said it before that I think piano was his. I love his ability to express himself on piano more than any instrument, and more than drums, more than bass or guitar or even acoustic. It's and even more, probably equal to his voice, his expression and how he moved on the keyboard from one song to another, especially during that piano show was pretty remarkable to be able to. That's where the virtuosic, being a virtuoso is important for people and young people to understand, is that that's not easy to do. It takes a lot of thought to move back and forth and sing, which was a pretty autobiographical show. Now, remember, I didn't know it was going to be autobiographical, those two shows, until they were happening. And in the meeting the night before, the several-hour meeting that we had about the set list, the set list itself didn't look like it was autobiographical. We just talked about, okay, let's do this, and can you do an effect here on me there, and then I'm going to go into this, and then we'll do that, and I think I'm going to change that, or I might do a David Bowie tribute, and I might do this, and there are a few maybes sprinkled in there as well. But then when he started the show and he spoke interstitially in between things, to hear, I said, oh, I see where this is going. It was pretty apparent pretty quickly that it was autobiographical, which is beautiful, because it was a surprise to everyone except Prince, which is great. It's always nice to be surprised. That's why I love the after shows. As much as I love mixing the shows with him, it's those after shows that were nail biters for me, because I never knew how good the gear was. When we were on a concert, it was easy because we knew the amount of control we had of all the gear, that things were going to work. But we had to. I had to do half those after shows. I have a list somewhere of the after shows that I mixed and over his career, and they were always nail biting, because I had to. I'm sure about half of those I mixed monitors from front of house position, right? So it was I had to do many things at once, and a lot of times there wasn't a lighting engineer in those clubs, so I would just turn the lighting board and I would mix and then do all the punches, do all the accents and punches. Wow. Or if there was a lighting engineer, I'd say, where are the punches, all white, so I could hit those on those, because they didn't know the show, right? So I had to sort of do a lot of things there. It was Dr. Octopus, as I like to say. I had to have 8 arms to do those, but those were a lot of fun because you never knew what was going to happen. That was Prince at his best. Those after shows are remarkable.
Man, is there any opportunity that you would, and maybe you do this, but just listening to you talk about, being a front of house engineer, if there was a person that was trying to get into this field or is just starting out, like, is there an opportunity? Would there ever be an opportunity for them to really soak in some game from Scottie Baldwin?
Well, I've thought about. Someone just contacted me about midweek here a few days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, and said, "Hey, will you ever do a master class?" And I don't. Maybe. I mean, I would. I do have a lot of knowledge to impart to people, but I always want to make it. I don't just want it to be just a bunch of stories. I think a lot of people, all they do is string stories together, and then one time this happened, another time this happened, and that's really, I don't think it's very valuable. It's a little bit of candy, I think, but it's not going to feed you. What you're eating, what you want to eat is something substantive and something that is actually meaningful. But when people get a hold of me and they say, "Hey, I'm doing this right now, and I'd like to do this, and how do I do that?" I always give thoughtful responses to that, because I understand what it's like to want to take your level of excellence and move it up. And when you talk to people who've been around and surrounded and dipped in excellence, and are excellent themselves at what they do, they can bring something. And I think it's incumbent upon the people that are good at what they do to pass on, pass that on to people freely, and make that part of what you want to do after all, at the end of your career. You want to have been respected and want to do a good job and pass things on. All you have is the level of respect that people have for you. So you want to do the right thing for the right reason. There's a dollar and a cent in it for everyone trying to work things like a job, right? There's always that. But you additionally, it's nice to, when I'm asked to speak there's a manufacturer, a sound company with whom I work every year, and I go and speak, and I don't just throw out Prince stories. I talk about how I'll sprinkle in Prince stories, but they always lead somewhere. Well, that's important, because it said for me to be ready to do this, or I had to be thinking musically about that. Mm-hmm. There's always a this or that involved, and try and bring it back to something that's actually usable by people, so that they can actually. There are the stories, there are good stories that have nothing to do with education, but it's maybe someday I'll put something together.
Yeah, I mean, even just like, as I would imagine, there is a lot of gear and tech involved in what you do. And there's always new things coming out. And, hey, how did you do this? Or, how did this interface? Or you spoke about even just like you didn't know the equipment would be the state of the equipment at this, and an after show. Is it different from what you guys normally use? Or, those sort of things too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the good thing I think about me, or the thing of which I'm very proud, is that I'm not despite what I do for a living, I'm not a gearhead. I'm not a techie like that.
Okay.
I think the magic always lies within the people and the performance rather than in the gear. You want to pay for the ear, not for the gear, right? That's you don't
Say
have
that
to
one more time.
You pay for the gear. You don't want to pay for the gear. Pay for the ear. Don't pay for the gear. That was accidental when I said that one to someone one time when I was negotiating something, and I said, hey, you don't need to spend all this money on this gear. I won't need this and this and this. In that regard, I very much have held on to my my roots of being with Prince. Is that Prince didn't need anything fancy. He could have a rented guitar and a rented amp and still make it sing. And that's something I've held on to. Some people, like a Binky, like a pacifier, they need certain gear with them when they do their job. I need this bass, or I need this amp, or I need this soundboard. I need these plugins. And I don't think it has to do with that. I mean, it doesn't have to do with that. Speaking about Queen, what did Queen record on? A 24-track recorder. They doubled up all their vocals. They shoved them down. They kept bouncing them down to the last 2 tracks probably, and they still sound great because it's in the performance, right? Freddie Mercury used I forgot what it's called, a Shure 565 or something. Essentially a Shure SM58, the most commonly and recognizable microphone on the planet. He used that live almost his entire career, and no one talks about how it was a bad microphone. They talk about that he's the purest rock vocalist in history, right? So it's always in the performance. It's not in the gear or how it's recorded. Some people would disagree. A lot of people would disagree with me, but I vehemently, that's one I'll stand up for.
I would agree. I get a lot of people that, they want to get into podcasting and they do I got to get this? I say, listen, just get a mic and hit record. That's all you need.
That's good that you tell them that, because that's important, because you're imparting your own excellence on them. Your preparation for interviews and the excellence and the angles and you have to take a guy like me I can tangentize better than anyone. I get off on these tangents, and then you have to kind of sheepdog me back to what we're really talking about. There's an art to that. There's an art to what you do. So that's the art, not the quality. Although I will say that for this interview, I had to think 5 minutes before I called. I thought, I have to find a good mic to speak into, just because I know as a listener, you want to hear something that sounds good and pleasing. You don't want to have to hear somebody on the phone, ideally, right? You want a good connection, and you want good, because most people listen to this in headphones anyway. So you want to actually be in their head, and you don't want to be talking through so there is a little bit of tech in me, but not much. I do it very much the way Prince did. He always called it guerrilla style. Let's do it guerrilla style.
I love that.
So we would just show up at these shows and just do what we could do and get out of it what we could get, and never leave anything on the table, so to speak. Just leave it all there on the stage.
Wow. So, sort of wrapping things up, Scottie, what's next for you? Is it just you can continue to doing front of house? Is there any other aspirations that you may have?
Well, Dave Hampton and I have been talking about, and actually actively doing exactly what you had brought up a little earlier, which is getting out and speaking to people and going to different cities and speaking about not just engineering and not just about studio building or front of house engineering. It's about almost what this show is about, which is excellence, and talking about almost like a TED Talk, if you will, but just talking about operating at a high level. And Dave and I, when you get us, in the same room, we can bring a lot of that, unearth a lot of that sort of feeling. And so that we're actively working on that and trying to book something. That's a little bit scary, because it's something that I've done front of house for so many years, and actually had to. I'm not really a go-getter. I don't continually eat things up and do something and say, now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do this. I've had a sort of successful but lazy, successful career, right? Been good at what I've done and been successful at it, but not really had to do a lot more than I was doing. And, but I really love working in China, and I really like the challenge of working with Lee Hom because he's so schooled and knowledgeable and such a musical person that it keeps me on my toes. The band is phenomenal, and there's a spirit of there's an energy and a spirit to things that is all on the same page. Everyone's there to have a great time, and it's the huge crowds, and it's all in stadiums. So it's very exciting to do that. I'll do that as long as I can with Lee Hom because it's so fun, but yeah, moving on and actually lecturing and then being paid to lecture, kind of trying to, as in jobs, we have to make these changes, right? Everything ends up being like the visual I always bring up of Indiana Jones in front of that gold skull. And he had the bag of sand and he had to grab the skull and put the bag of sand on there. Right. We all sort of have to do that in our careers, right? We all have to, and it's scary to move from one thing to the other. So do I become a studio engineer? No, maybe not at this point in my career. Do I do front of house for yet another artist or somebody else and move tour to tour? I think I'm at the point in my career where I'm trying to educate others on how to be good at what they do, not just front of house.
Okay.
Which is a perfect reason to come on your program because you do that. And I like the fact that you talk about that and talk about high level, operating at a high level.
I appreciate that. So one thing I try to do with this show, these last couple questions here, and try to make this quick, is I want to ask you to give me 2 movies that mean whatever they mean to you. Because I'm a movie guy, and sometimes when I think about movies, they shape how I feel about certain things, or they just may shape sometimes how I feel, and they've lasted with me a long time. That may or may not be the case for you, but nonetheless, I'm asking this question. So can you give me 2 movies that you really love, or you would say, these mean a lot to me?
Well, the first would be Rocky.
Oh, okay.
If people haven't, everyone's heard of Rocky, sort of, and just because it's a big part of pop culture. But the movie Rocky, I watch at least once a year, because, and the reason I like it more than any of the other Rocky films is that it's, and I will even show it to my daughters because there's nothing in there that's graphic or gratuitous. But the reason I like it is that he lost at the end, and that but he didn't care. It truly is a love story with boxing in it, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a boxing movie. If people say it's a boxing movie, they're just wrong. It's a love story that has boxing in it, and it's really, I like it because it's a very human condition. Most people don't. I don't know if this is true, but I was going to say most people don't win in life at everything. Well, not at everything, certainly. You don't win everything in life, and it's how you deal with the losses that really define who a person is. There, I found it. I got it. Yeah. So it's not winning in life that defines you. It's how you deal with the losses. To me, the most interesting story is never the guy in the end zone spiking the ball on the last play of the game or sinking the 3-pointer that wins the game. It's the guy who he beat or the person who he beat to make that possible, right? That's the interesting story. The person that got burned on the route that, has their helmet off at the 20-yard line. And that's what Rocky was. But Rocky didn't care that he lost. It's important to there's humility in that story of losing and being what some people would see as a loser, but he ultimately it's very meaningful because he found love in that movie, and I think that's important. The second one is an easy one for me, which is The Natural, a Robert Redford movie about a baseball player, and that fits in with the theme today is that he's the best, and he always says in the movie, I just want people after I'm done to say, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best that ever was. Right? So he just wanted to be great. He just wanted greatness, and he wanted to be excellent. It didn't matter. He just wanted to be known for being the best that ever was. And so,
okay, I don't think I've actually seen that movie. I've heard of it. I got to watch it then.
It's beautiful. It's got, I think Randy Newman did the score, so that's another one to listen to because the musical score is so unlike anything Randy Newman had done, and it's just so Oh, they have that era down. It's really a beautiful film to look at, and it's and the message in it is that he just wanted to be the best that ever was, and it's really quite special. So between Rocky and The Natural, you kind of got two good ones there. It's nothing too crazy, but they both celebrate humility and excellence.
Yeah, it's so funny. I don't want to go on a tangent of this because we easily could, but it's interesting that the Rocky, I guess, franchise moves away from that original movie. Like it was really about him winning the fight, or the later ones become all about the spectacle of, the fight. But I think it goes to transition back to that original movie with maybe like, I would actually say the Creed movies. I don't know if you've seen them. They sort of really have that. At least the first one really sort of comes back to, I think, it's going to have the fight spectacle of it now, but it really was more about the relationship between the people.
Sylvester Stallone is a great artist. He and I think what he was trying to say, it took him many, many films to say it, but I think he was trying to get back to that. And I think he did, not through Rocky's experience, but the experience of the son of his first opponent. Mm-hmm. And he finally made his way back. And some of that was just money in the middle. Rocky 4 and 5, I can say for sure. But when he got to Rocky Balboa, which I think was the sixth one,
that was a good one.
That was a good one because he started to make his way back toward the humility of getting back to what he was, and he started to feel lost in his life. And I know this is all fictional, that we're ending on a note of fiction, but so is the music business, right?
Right.
Everyone who puts Prince songs in their car every day and might still cry thinking about Prince and losing Prince, everything he did was real, but he was talking about and experiencing things that were fictional for the most part. So we live in a world of fiction. We use it as art. Art is, well, I think it was Picasso that said art is a lie that tells us the truth. Mm. So we ingest this art, and then it tells us the truth about ourselves.
Yeah, and I think some of the best art, for me, I am a sci-fi fan. A lot of the best science fiction it may take place in this other world or whatever, but the themes of it are entrenched in our reality. And I think that's what makes it relatable. It's like,
right,
it can be out here looking crazy, but the same sort of stuff, sort of the themes of what's going on are themes that, some of the issues going on in our own life. I mean, you can even look at, I think, and we're going to stop because we could go crazy, but like some of the original zombie movies, I think were successful because they were actually about a lot of other things with some of these characters we're dealing with amidst, these zombie apocalypse situations.
Well, of course, and that would speak to some of the shows that are popular now,
exactly,
and how it's just the setting may be different, but it's always about those things are always about internal struggle. I think most of them, most stories are.
All right, woo, Scottie, sir.
I know it's hard to end because we can just go on forever, and I'm sure that we lost some people along the way when I went off on one of my tangents. But I appreciate you very much, and I'm always happy to speak with you and talk as much as you want me to.
Oh man, I appreciate it. Now, where can people find you online if they want to follow you on different platforms here?
It's easy. I'm pretty much I'm at ScottieBaldwin.com, SCOTTIE Baldwin, ScottieBaldwin.com. My email is on there somewhere, which is ScottieBaldwin@me.com. And then I think I'm just at Scottie Baldwin on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
And same with Instagram. That's, Instagram is more personal. It's just, I think most of us get us to a certain point in our Twitter or Instagram use, and then we go, oh man, I should have separated, right? I should have separated my business and my personal. So Twitter, I usually keep things about music and about the industry, and Instagram is just more for things that I'm not an over poster. I might be an over talker, but I'm not an over poster on either of those two.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. We would definitely check those out and follow you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to appreciate you for listening and giving us your time. Again, check us out at podcastjuice.net. Go to our website and click on the gear link there, and you can get your Work It Like a Job t-shirt and hoodies. We've sold quite a few so far already, so I'm very appreciative of that. Like I always say, work it like a job. We'll see you next time. Peace. Thank you for listening to the Work It Like a Job podcast. Check us out at workitlikeajob.com or podcastjuice.net. Be sure to click on the gear tab and get your official Work It Like a Job t-shirt.